Have you ever found yourself tangled in a story so layered that each new piece of information only brings more questions? That's exactly what happened when whispers emerged about tensions on the set of It Ends With Us, a film adaptation that initially promised a moving exploration of DV and personal growth. At the center of it all, you have Justin Baldoni, known not just as an actor, but also as the original driving force acquiring the rights to this project, and Blake Lively, the Hollywood star who stepped in to lead the production. On the surface, both seemed poised to create something meaningful from Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, a story intended to raise awareness and empathy for those affected by generational trauma. But behind the scenes, rumors started swirling that Blake was leveraging her clout to seize greater control, allegedly rewriting major aspects of the script with her husband, Ryan Reynolds, while Justin struggled to maintain his original vision. Before anyone realized the extent of the conflict, harsh allegations were exchanged, and the entire production spiraled into a public fiasco. Those in the know say it felt less like a collaboration and more like an escalating battle, all unfolding quietly until press tours and social media chatter made the situation impossible to ignore. This isn't the first time Blake Lively's public image has been challenged by behind-the-scenes gossip. Going back to her Gossip Girl days, some people in fan communities hinted at friction between her and the rest of the cast, fueling what they called her mean girl reputation. Tabloid stories and countless YouTube compilations spotlight her supposedly icy manner in interviews. Supporters of Blake often dismiss those perceptions as media exaggerations or misinterpretations, pointing out that her brand focuses on an almost wholesome vibe. She portrays herself as the playful mom who loves her family and shares witty banter with Ryan Reynolds. However, every star has their critics, and these negative anecdotes about on-set demeanor didn't disappear. They quietly lingered, waiting for a new conflict to surface. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni spent years establishing himself as a thoughtful public figure, discussing topics like empathy, masculinity, and personal growth. Anyone who has followed his career would expect him to handle disputes diplomatically, especially given his track record of focusing on socially conscious projects. On paper, pairing these two personalities might have seemed like a perfect fusion of star power and passionate storytelling. Yet as production kicked off, friction started brewing over creative decisions, particularly over how Lily Bloom, the central character in It Ends With Us, should be portrayed. Photos emerged from the set revealing costume choices that many fans of the novel found baffling. Instead of reflecting Lily's subtle growth and humble beginnings, outfits came across as mismatched or distractingly flashy. That's when blame started landing squarely on Blake for allegedly taking costume decisions into her own hands, overshadowing costume designers, and by extension, Justin's original concept. Vocal fans took to social media, saying that these outlandish styles clashed with the book's portrayal, leaving them convinced that producers had lost sight of Lily's essence. They also questioned why a movie grounded in themes of heartbreak and resilience would emphasize out-of-place leopard prints or questionable color combinations. While it's not unusual for an actor to have input on their character's wardrobe, the real controversy began when Blake admitted in interviews that many of the outfits indeed came from her personal closet. She even described incorporating her husband's clothing into Lily's style, proudly calling it storytelling through fashion. Some fans felt this revelation trivialized the depth of the novel's themes, turning Lily's struggles into a backdrop for an experimental costume parade. Unsurprisingly, this was only the tip of the iceberg. Rumors allege that once Blake had a foothold in creative decisions, starting with the wardrobe, she continued exerting influence on the film's direction. Compounding these concerns was the manner in which Blake handled the press circuit. When cast members normally join forces to promote a shared project, you'd expect them to appear united in interviews. Instead, Justin was noticeably absent from major publicity pushes, overshadowed by Blake discussing everything except the movie's core subject matter. Rather than address the heavy domestic violence themes head-on, she often pivoted the conversation toward her entrepreneurial ventures or her personal philosophies about multitudes of womanhood. Observers found it jarring that a story meant to spotlight a cycle of emotional wounds was being reframed like a breezy romantic comedy. Meanwhile, Justin used his limited public platform to talk candidly about the seriousness of DV and generational patterns of trauma, urging sensitivity. This stark contrast couldn't have been more obvious. On one side, a glossed-over promotion focusing on fashion and empowerment. On the other side, a director-producer emphasizing empathy and caution around the content. Fans noticed, and they weren't shy about voicing their confusion. Whenever Blake sidestepped the movie's real subject, critics interpreted it as either a sign of internal friction or a calculated effort to reshape the film's identity into something more marketable. Regardless of the motive, tensions now spilled out from the set onto social media timelines and gossip sites. The rift was visible, although neither side publicly admitted to major disputes yet. But that was only the beginning of the drama, which escalated when Blake went from being criticized for overshadowing creative decisions to filing a formal complaint that shook the... Once the press tour ended, rumors of deeper conflict burst into the mainstream, bringing previously hidden exchanges into the spotlight. Followers of the project discovered that Blake Lively had filed a legal complaint, accusing Justin Baldoni of orchestrating a smear campaign to undermine her reputation. She made multiple claims of being subjected to unwelcome on-set behavior and persistent intimidation, even arguing that Justin and one of the producers had invaded her privacy by entering her makeup trailer without her consent. Blake alleged that she'd raised concerns about unprofessional comments and was met with retaliation in the form of leaked stories designed to paint her as controlling and manipulative. The most sensational part of her statement was that she never explicitly labeled the alleged misconduct as outright assault, but she implied that lines were crossed in ways that left her feeling uncomfortable and marginalized. This development sent shockwaves throughout Hollywood. Supporters of Blake immediately rallied behind her, pointing to her past controversies as irrelevant distractions from these serious accusations. At the same time, fans loyal to Justin dismissed her claims as a strategic maneuver, suggesting that she might be trying to see. This wasn't merely a duel in the court of public opinion. It quickly escalated into a legal battlefield. The New York Times published an article that leaned heavily on Blake's perspective. That piece drew added credibility by virtue of one of its co-writers, Megan Twohey, being renowned for her investigative reporting on major entertainment industry scandals. Because of that connection, casual readers associated Justin's name with serious wrongdoing, even though the article lacked concrete proof of purposeful sabotage. Justin responded by filing a massive $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times, claiming they had rushed to publish Blake's side of the story without giving him adequate time to address or refute her points. In a lengthy 87-page document, his attorneys argued that Blake distorted context from their text messages and other communications, using carefully selected quotes that made him appear guilty. The lawsuit also mentioned that Justin and his team had, in fact, tried to protect the film's legacy and avoid mudslinging, contradicting the idea that they orchestrated any hostility toward Blake. Adding to the confusion, each side accused the other of heavy-handed editing. In one version, Justin's references to Lily Bloom's attire as sexy supposedly came at Blake's request. She had asked for outfits that projected bolder, more vivacious energy. In another version, that same comment got twisted into something more invasive, as though Justin were making unsolicited remarks about Blake's body. People who'd once praised both these figures for their professionalism were now caught in a swirl of conflicting. Another key player emerged in this saga, Ryan Reynolds. By virtue of being Blake's husband and an influential Hollywood figure, Ryan's rumored involvement at certain production meetings gave the story an added twist. According to inside reports, a pivotal moment happened at Blake and Ryan's residence in New York City. Tension peaked when Ryan criticized Justin for allegedly making disparaging remarks about Blake's physical appearance, an accusation Justin denies. Witnesses at that meeting described Ryan's outburst as intense, with some insiders saying they'd never seen anything like it in their decades-long careers. Sony representatives, apparently conflicted about how to handle the confrontation, came away regretting that they hadn't intervened sooner. These accounts fueled speculation that corporate executives might have felt more pressured to comply with Blake's creative demands, given Ryan's Hollywood status as a bankable star and marketing genius. Indeed, Sony was reportedly put in a tough spot: side with Justin, who had passionately worked on the project from the beginning, or maintain good relations with Blake and Ryan, who wield significant box office influence. Some watchers see this power dynamic as emblematic of how star-driven the industry has become, where financial considerations may trump loyalty to the original creative team. For Justin, that translated into losing the final cut of the film, even though test audiences had responded more favorably to his version. The official explanation was that Blake's cut streamlined the narrative for broader commercial appeal. Critics called it yet another sign of star power overshadowing a director's vision, especially since advanced screenings indicated Justin's version resonated more profoundly with the movie's. Meanwhile, online communities dug into every available piece of evidence, from video snippets of cast interviews to rumored text leaks. People noticed that Blake had begun referencing her own authorship within the film, claiming she'd poured personal stories and familial experiences into Lily's journey. Though that sounds inspiring at a glance, critics wondered why her version seemed to deviate so heavily from the heartfelt pivot of the novel, focusing instead on fashion experiments and quippy dialogue. Blake's supporters argue that it's her right to interpret Lily in her own way, especially as a mother who's faced various real-world pressures. Skeptics ask whether the final product does justice to the serious issue at the novel's core, or simply becomes a vanity project wrapped in a moral facade. What's more, some allege that the entire fiasco trivialized claims of harassment by weaponizing them in a creative tug-of-war. Observers who take Justin's side see him as a casualty of a flawed system, forced out by a bigger star's demands, and then vilified when he pushed back. In response, the lively camp maintains that any mention of overshadowing the film's message is an attempt to distort the real concerns she raised. The conflicting accounts create a labyrinth where truth is hard to pin down, leaving many to wonder if we'll ever know the full story about who manipulated whom, or whether this is simply a high-stakes example of how reputation, power, and public narratives intersect in modern Hollywood. Even with these weighty implications, the story was still unfolding as post-production wrapped. The rumor mill insisted that top Sony executives held closed-door sessions to gauge if they could salvage the film's credibility without fueling more negative headlines. Yet all of that was just a prelude to the next bombshell. Public scrutiny intensified once footage from early screenings leaked online, suggesting that Justin's cut offered a more emotional and faithful adaptation of the novel's themes. Fans noticed that this version delved deeply into the painful cycle of DV, capturing Lily Bloom's internal conflicts and emotional scars with more nuance. Many considered it a bold choice to tackle sensitive issues, praising Justin for not glossing over the harsh realities that the book presents. On the flip side, the leaked clips from Blake's final edit felt somewhat disjointed, emphasizing a vibrant aesthetic that clashed with the novel's darker tones. Critics latched onto these contrasts, debating whether the film had lost its moral core amid creative power struggles. Some labeled the finished product a watered-down rebranding intended to suit mainstream tastes and preserve certain reputations. Still, the production team around Blake argued that too heavy a focus on trauma might alienate viewers or make the movie less approachable. They defended the shift as a practical move to widen the audience and keep the project profitable enough to finance future adaptations of similarly challenging material. The conflicting narratives brought other controversies out of the shadows. Gossip channels recycled old footage of Blake's interactions on various sets, painting her as someone who often stepped on toes or interrupted co-stars. A journalist even released an unaired interview clip from years back, claiming that it exemplified Blake's consistent mean streak. Though the interview itself might look relatively tame to some, Blake appeared sarcastic rather than overtly hostile. Viewers quickly tied it to the present scandal, concluding that her alleged habit of overshadowing colleagues had never gone away. Even so, many found the timing suspicious, accusing the journalist of exploiting the drama for personal gain. The saga became a case study in how negative or ambiguous moments from a star's past can resurface when new controversies erupt, whether or not those older incidents are truly relevant. In the thick of all this, Justin Baldoni tried to take the high road. He refrained from directly attacking Blake in public statements, pivoting instead to a narrative of focusing on the film's message. He spoke about compassion and healing, even praising Blake's talents during promotional appearances. But the distance between them grew more obvious. The pair never shared a stage or interview segment to address the situation jointly. Unfollowed social media accounts and cryptic tweets added more fuel to the speculation that animosity had reached the point of no return. Justin's supporters called his reserve a testament to his character, while skeptics wondered if the niceties were part of a defensive strategy advised by... The entire fiasco left Sony in a precarious place. As the alleged behind-the-scenes power struggles went viral, the studio faced mounting criticism. Why didn't they intervene earlier to mediate between the star and the producer-director? Did they overlook questionable behavior to keep an A-list name attached to the film? Inside sources suggested that Sony had pinned high hopes on Blake's public image drawing in a broad audience. They saw her as a magnet for mainstream viewers, not only because of her acting credentials, but also due to her social media presence and relationship with Ryan Reynolds, a proven box office heavyweight. In contrast, Justin, while respected, had less star wattage in the eyes of big studio executives. As fans on both sides traded verbal blows online, the question of accountability lingered. Were these allegations of wrongdoing real, or had they become convenient leverage in a power game over final creative say? And most importantly, how would the public's reception of the finished film be shaped by all these swirling controversies? People who championed the novel's authenticity expressed concern that overshadowing the DV themes in favor of flashy marketing might undermine the emotional honesty that made It Ends With Us so impactful. The fear was that watchers seeking a genuine depiction of Lily Bloom's struggles could find themselves encountering a toned-down, style-driven piece. Meanwhile, others argued that no adaptation is ever identical to its source, and that what matters most is the conversation it sparks. If even a fraction of the audience gains insight into cycle of hurt dynamics, some say the project will have achieved its purpose. Yet the truth is, a shadow of doubt has fallen over the entire production. Whether or not Justin is vindicated in court, or Blake is proven correct in her claims, the film might forever be associated with the scandal that surrounded its creation. Some cynics propose that any publicity is good publicity, suggesting the drama could drive more viewers to see the movie simply out of curiosity. But in more empathetic circles, the fiasco came off as a grim reminder of how quickly critical social issues like DV can get lost in the swirl of star politics and legal face-offs. Observers who expected a triumphant new wave of socially conscious filmmaking from this project are left divided. Had the story become more about petty feuds and power moves than the serious themes originally intended? Were valid concerns about on-set conduct overshadowed by the spectacle of Hollywood personalities clashing for creative dominance? And could the final product truly do justice to survivors' experiences when so many resources were poured into damage control rather than thoughtful advocacy? Some believed that once the dust settled, the film's release might surprise viewers by striking the right emotional chords. Others braced for disappointment, anticipating a sanitized version of the harrowing journey that made the novel memorable. In either case, this production became a perfect storm of star power, legal drama, and online speculation, encapsulating how quickly personal disputes can eclipse even the weightiest of topics. Yet the roller coaster wasn't over. There was still the matter of release scheduling, potential reshoots, and the looming question: would the controversies overshadow the premiere or somehow drive more attention to it? But the biggest revelations were yet to come. As the final cut moved closer to release, speculation continued to swirl around whether Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively could find any common ground. Various industry pundits weighed in, with some predicting that the legal showdowns would only intensify once the public got a look at the finished film. Meanwhile, tabloids hinted that more unflattering text exchanges might leak, possibly exposing additional behind-the-scenes arguments over script rewrites, casting decisions, and even financial deals. Unnamed insiders described an environment so fraught with mistrust that meetings were either canceled or held via separate channels, preventing direct interaction between the key figures. Sony, for its part, remained tight-lipped, issuing carefully worded statements about its commitment to the film's integrity, without aligning definitively with either Blake or Justin. Amid this swirl of tension and uncertainty, fans voiced conflicted feelings, some refusing to support the project due to the disarray, others remaining curious to see how the adaptation handled crucial themes of heartbreak and resilience. Blake Lively's stance stayed resolute. She wanted to present a version of Lily that felt dynamic, hopeful, and complex, not just defined by victimhood or heartbreak. She framed this approach as empowering for audiences, especially those who might see themselves in Lily's story. Critics, however, pointed out that Lily's strength in the original novel emerges precisely because she confronts painful realities, not by glossing them over in whimsical wardrobes or comedic tangents. They questioned whether Blake's brand of positivity might dilute the visceral impact of a narrative meant to highlight how harmful cycles repeat across generations. Even so, her admirers continued praising Blake's championing of self-expression, claiming that empowerment can wear many faces. It's possible, they argued, to address serious themes and still maintain a tone of optimism. On the other hand, Justin Baldoni repeatedly emphasized authenticity. He argued that Lily's journey deserved a faithful representation that showed every scar, whether emotional or physical, so viewers wouldn't lose sight of the novel's deeper messages. According to Justin's supporters, if you strip away the grit, you lose the chance to educate the audience. With lawyers on both sides, every public statement began to feel rehearsed, as though each word had been carefully vetted. The swirl of lawsuits only got more complicated when Justin launched his countersuit against the New York Times, accusing them of negligent reporting. In that case, Justin stated that more context around certain text messages and on-set encounters would exonerate him, proving that he tried to maintain professionalism despite numerous provocations. Documents hinted at a broader scheme to portray him negatively in the media, adding layers to the question of who orchestrated what behind the scenes. For the average observer, it became a dizzying puzzle. Who was telling the truth, and who was spinning a narrative for maximum damage control? Industry whispers suggested that many within Hollywood were privately taking sides. Some A-list actors, particularly those who'd once collaborated with Blake, quietly stood by her account, believing that Justin's approach might have been too rigid or invasive. Others, especially those who'd worked closely with Justin in prior ventures, believed the entire fiasco was a star power coup, orchestrated to push him aside and overshadow his role in the film he'd nurtured from the beginning. Few were willing to speak publicly, though, likely out of fear of alienating one camp or the other. Before long, the conversation spilled out into the broader cultural sphere. People on social media debated not just the credibility of these allegations, but also the wider issue of how major studios handle films about sensitive subjects? When a story aims to spotlight domestic or emotional strife, should a star's desire to shape that narrative ever override the original creative plan? Is it ethical to bury or soften the raw pain that the novel's readers expect? As these questions ignited discussions far beyond Hollywood circles, the project became both a cautionary tale and a trending topic, with cynics asserting that this entire conflict was just another example of how business interests hijack important conversations. Yet others speculated that the controversies might drive more viewers to see the film out of sheer curiosity, inadvertently amplifying its message, however altered that message might be. By the time the movie was slated for release, the general audience had been bombarded with a flurry of rumors, statements, leaked documents, and conflicting interviews. Viewers were left to decide for themselves who to believe or whether to disengage from the drama altogether. People who read Colleen Hoover's novel braced themselves for a version that might differ drastically from the book. Meanwhile, those who were only drawn in by the high-profile feud found themselves invested in whether Justin or Blake would emerge vindicated, or if both would come away tarnished by a scandal that overshadowed a story intended to shed light on cycles of hurt and healing. And so it all culminates in a question that lingers across fan forums and industry boardrooms. Who truly bears responsibility for this unraveling situation? And does the final film honor the novel's emotional gravitas or compromise it for commercial flair? In the end, this saga underscores the precarious intersection of creativity, reputation, and power dynamics in Hollywood. It's a place where star status can reshape entire productions, where legal battles can eclipse narrative integrity, and where swirling accusations can consume the focus once aimed at real-life issues. Whether you side with Blake Lively's vision of an empowering tale, Justin Baldoni's mission for raw authenticity, or land somewhere in between, it's clear that It Ends With Us became more than just a film. It morphed into a microcosm of how competing agendas can overshadow even the most urgent stories. As you look at the finished product, consider all the twists and turns that led here. Has the core message about overcoming destructive patterns survived, or has it been buried beneath the spectacle? Let us know what you think. Whose version resonates with you? And can a major Hollywood adaptation ever do justice to the raw reality of a story meant to address deep-rooted trauma? Share your thoughts and stay tuned, because in a landscape like this, the final word may still be up for debate.